Good evening, Minnesota and beyond, and welcome to our second CanRenew and CanGrow Grants Program information session. Very excited to share space with you and talk about some exciting programs that our office will be offering. So I'm Jess. I'm the Director of Social Equity within the Office of Cannabis Management, and I'm joined this evening with my colleague Lucy Angeles, who is our grants manager. And to kick us off and to have some engagement in this session as we talk about our grants program, I want to know who's in the room, who's represented. So I think a poll will be coming on the screen for you to engage in to let us know where you're coming from. I hope that there are lots of folks in the room, but we have nonprofit organizations, community organizations, local government, educational institutions, others. Let us know where you're coming from. Give you a few seconds while folks are joining us to fill out that poll. And I think, did we share the results? Hey, I don't see the results on my screen, but did we share the results?
Looks like you might be able to see the results in the chat.
Ah.
I see majority private business owners and entrepreneurs and local government organizations.
And thanks, Marone. And that is our outreach director, Marone. Thank you for giving us some of that information so we know who we're working with today. I'm just going to give you a high-level overview of our office really quick. So I know that some of you might not be familiar with our grants program. You might not be familiar with what we do at the Office of Cannabis Management. So I just want to set some grounding for today so that we're all on the same page about who we are, what we do, what we were established to do. We are a part of the executive arm of government, right? So that means that we regulate and enforce the law as written through the legislature. Sure. And the way that our state law is written, the Office of Cannabis Management is established to promote public health and welfare, to protect public safety, to eliminate the illicit market for cannabis, to meet the market demand of cannabis, to promote a craft industry for cannabis, and to prioritize growth and recovery in communities that have experienced a disproportionate negative impact from cannabis prohibition. And that last bullet, that last charge is really what we are carrying on in our mission for the Division of Social Equity. So if you're not familiar, statute also, or state law also defines these communities that have experienced a disproportionate negative impact from cannabis prohibition as eligible communities. And the way that they define eligible communities in state law is communities where a social equity qualified applicant is more likely to be a long-term resident. And so if you're not familiar with what a social equity applicant is, that is also outlined in statute. And I like to say there's like four buckets, right? There's the justice impacted community that is prioritized in our social equity applicant pool. The justice impacted community are those who have been convicted of a cannabis offense, had a parent, guardian, or child who was convicted of a cannabis offense, or a dependent of an individual who was convicted of a cannabis offense. So when we're thinking about justice impacted, we're thinking about the full breadth of folks who have been impacted by our justice system related to cannabis. Additionally, with justice impacted community, we're looking at residents who have experienced a disproportionately large amount of cannabis enforcement. So communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the justice system related to cannabis enforcement is also considered in that justice impacted group. We have a military affiliated group of social equity qualified folks, and those military affiliated folks are service disabled veterans, current or former members of the National Guard, or any military veteran, and then also anyone who lost honorable status due to an offense involving possession or sale of marijuana. So we have a few ways that folks qualify for that military affiliated qualifier. And then we also have our farmers. So farmers who have been in operation of a farm for at least 3 years, that had a gross sales of at least $5,000, but no more than $100,000, qualify for social equity in the state of Minnesota. And then we're also looking at our economically disadvantaged communities. So the communities where the poverty rate was 20% or more, where the median family income did not exceed 80% of the statewide median family income, where at least 20% of the households are receiving SNAP, and where the population has a high level of vulnerability according to the CDC social vulnerability index. So that's like when we think about state law and who qualifies for social equity, that's what's outlined in our state law. And then when we think about communities that are qualified for social equity, we're really thinking about those communities where these folks are more likely to have been long-standing, long-term residents. That's how it's outlined in state law. So the Division of Social Equity is meant to be a liaison to these communities. We're meant to partner with these communities to help uh, uh, promote development and stability and safety in those communities. So the things that we do is we engage with and represent the community. So today's listening session is one way that we engage with the community, but we also do, and this is a broad listening session, but if you wanted a specific listening session or a feedback loop with your organization, at the end of the session, we'll talk about ways for you to do that. We're always looking for ways to hear your perspective and to be able to share out with your organizations. We administer grants, the Can Renew and Can Grow grants. And I want, in a little bit, I'll ask you a question around what you're here to hear about. Are you more interested in Can Renew or Can Grow? We act as an ombudsman person. So when there are complaints from our community, we do impartial investigation and work to facilitate resolutions to those complaints. And then we are reporters. And I think that that's the biggest way that our division gets to be able to liaison and partner with the community, is to provide data around our impact and the status of complaints and status of social equity, and report out to the legislature around our grants. We are a team of 8. So I myself serve in the role as director. We have an ombudsman person, a social equity analyst, a grants manager, who is Lucy, who's on the call with me this evening. And then we have 2 grants coordinators, one for Can Renew and one for Can Grow. And we'll be hiring an executive assistant here shortly. So like I said, the Division of Social Equity is the division housed in the Office of Cannabis Management that promotes development, stability, and safety in communities that have experienced a disproportionate negative impact from cannabis prohibition and usage. So this conversation is an early opener to what we're planning to do for our grants, right? This is a information session about where we are to date, but that doesn't mean things won't change. We are also engaging with community to get feedback around our processes, to get feedback around where they think these dollars should go, to really ensure that what we're doing reflects those eligible communities. And so please, this disclaimer, note that the information provided is the session is for informational purposes only and is not final. So all of the details regarding the grants are not might change. These are not definitive guidance. So if you're really interested in these grants, make sure that you're going to our website and signing up for our mailing list, and be attuned to what's online on our website, because that's going to be the most current and most accurate information. With that, I want to know what you're interested in. Why are you joining us here today? So I think there'll be another poll around who what grant program you're interested in. Are you interested in Can Renew? Are you more interested in Can Grow? Are you interested in both? So I think that poll will open up shortly, and I'll give you a few seconds to respond to that.
And you should be able to respond right in the chat. So it should pop up and say which grant program are you most interested in, and you should be able to select there.
Thanks, Merle.
And it looks like you're already getting some responses. It's equaling out a bit, but quite a number for CanGrow and CanRenew, and a number of people that
Nice.
are here for both.
Nice. Well, I'll get right into CanRenew. Thank you for engaging with us and letting us know what you're interested in. And so I know that many of you might not be familiar with our programs at all. So the same way that we've kind of framed what our office does and what the division does, we also wanted to give you a perspective around like why this grant program exists, and what it's here to do. So the Can Renew program, we like to, it's a community reinvestment program. And I know that for some of our nonprofit partners, the language of cannabis in the name might make you think this isn't relevant to the work that you're doing. But this is a community reinvestment, a community renewal grant. So it's meant to support those eligible communities, right, which are the communities where our social equity applicants are more likely to have been long-term residents. And it's meant to undo some of the harms of cannabis prohibition and usage. And those harms could be related to youth development, it could be related to civil legal aid, it could be related to the social determinants of health, it could be related to economic empowerment and economic development and housing. So this is not just specific to cannabis businesses, it is really looking at the opportunities to make investments in some of the gaps that exist because of cannabis prohibition and usage in our communities. So this is designed to support eligible organizations, and we'll get into what an eligible organization is shortly, to make investments in communities as that are identified as having long-term residents who are eligible to be social equity applicants. It's really, really important. The way that you qualify for this grant program is that your investment is being made in an eligible community. You do not have to be a cannabis business to qualify. You do not have to be doing cannabis work at all to qualify. The only qualifier here is that you're making investments in communities that are eligible communities, where we define in law eligible communities as communities that are identified as having long-term residents who are eligible for social equity. A community investment is a project or program that's designed to improve community-wide outcomes or experiences. And this can involve economic development, those apprenticeship programs that you see, those internship programs that you see, those housing placement programs that you see. It could be around improving social determinants of health, thinking about access to healthcare and mental health care, violence prevention, and youth development and civil legal aid. So again, these are community impact issues within communities that have been disproportionately harmed. They're not specific to cannabis. An eligible community, again, is a community where long-term residents are eligible to be social equity applicants. And an eligible organization is any organization that can make these investments. So those could be educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, private businesses, community groups, units of local government, or partnerships between them all. And we'll talk about that. And so that kind of gives you the framework of like what this grant is meant to do in communities. And I'm going to pass it over to our grant manager, Lucy, who's going to talk about how we do that. Did I lose Lucy? Oh, Lucy, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. Hi again, everybody that couldn't hear me. My name is Lucy Angeles. I am the grants manager with the Office of Cannabis Management. And I'm so glad that we get to talk about these two programs today. As Jess was talking about the Can Renew program that's eligible for those community organizations to do projects. We're looking at projects between $50,000 and $200,000 for grant requests. And these projects will last about 12 months. And then we're going to provide priority to those organizations because we want to make sure that we're being thoughtful, and we want to make sure that those organizations have community support for that project. And so we're going to be looking for letters of support. And then also we want to work with organizations that hopefully have some youth engagement, whether that's youth-led health education, civic, or other leadership opportunities out there. That is something that we're going to provide priority to. And then also those organizations that have done this before, right? They've got that history with the community, and they've done similar projects, maybe not with our grant funding, but with another grant funding, or they want to expand. So with those organizations with a demonstrated history of that successful community investment, especially in those eligible communities. That's what we're looking for. And so we're looking at those communities, remember, that face significant challenges under previous policies. And so because they were really harmed by those prohibition policies. And so as Jeff alluded to, we're looking at those projects that center around economic development, uh, improving social determinants of health, the healthcare, mental health, that's all very needed avenues of projects out there, as well as violence prevention, youth development, and civil legal aid. We're also looking at other projects because we know that these 5 areas aren't the only projects out there, but we want to make sure that we're capturing all the viable projects out there that need to happen. And then please remember, just because the Office of Cannabis Management is providing these grant dollars, the projects don't have to relate to cannabis. And that's one of the huge misconceptions with CanRenew, because everybody sees Office of Cannabis Management providing grant dollars, but this actual program, you don't have to have anything related to cannabis. The project just needs to occur in a community that has that eligible community, right? The ones that have been adversely impacted by those previous prohibition policies. And so, oh, yes, sorry. So those organizations can apply that have a tendency that can make investments in communities identified as having long-term residents who are eligible social equity applicants. So those organizations, as Jeff referenced, the nonprofit organizations, we want those organizations that have the established partnerships already in the communities, right? And that can be those nonprofit organizations, but it also can be educational institutions or a private business, community groups, co-ops, units of local government. And then, of course, we love to encourage collaboration. So, of course, we want to encourage those partnerships, because it might be a nonprofit working with a school for an after-school project, or maybe it's a community group working with a private business for a sponsorship or something.
That's a great point, Lucy, that sometimes these collaborative projects are able to lean on the capability and capacity of another organization. So some of the feedback that we've also received about this grant program are for organizations that might have smaller operating budgets or not able to do the reimbursement model that is required with state grants. But if you partner with a larger organization that might have some fiduciary capacity to support that, that can help you optimize the impact of these grant dollars, right? So really thinking strategically about who can be a partner in the work that you're doing in community so that you're able to improve community-wide outcomes. And as we're engaging with community, our list of potential projects and what community needs are growing. And we recognize that these communities have, the eligible communities that these dollars need to go towards have a lot of different needs and a lot of different audiences. So we wanted to provide kind of some examples when we're talking talking about economic development, we might be talking about housing stability and home ownership. We might be talking about financial counseling and job placement. As we're thinking about civil legal aid, we might be looking at reentry work for the folks who are justice impacted, or thinking about their children as they're incarcerated. What types of programs are supporting the children of incarcerated folks, right? As we're thinking about improving social determinants of health, really thinking about homeopathic remedies for our aging communities. As we're thinking about violence prevention, looking at intervention and training towards that intervention to support some of that prevention, right? As we're looking around youth development, how can our programs provide literacy? How can our programs provide economic access through apprenticeship and internship? So there's lots of ways that these dollars can be used to improve community-wide outcomes. And to Lucy's point, it doesn't have to be of these designated categories. The legislature left it open for communities to really communicate their needs. The only thing that is the big is that this money needs to go towards those eligible communities. And you can provide documentation and proof to show why a proportion of your community has eligible social equity applicants in your application. So I'm going to pass it over to talk a little bit about our application process to Lucy.
Okay. So yeah. So basically, as you're writing your application, we want to make sure that we fully understand your project. The I think they're the 5 W's, right? The why, what, when, where, how. I've never understood how it got to be a W, but um, so we want to understand your the wh- we want the whole picture, right? Just not the fact that you want to do this project. We want to know who's in the community, um, and then why is it needed, um, and then what do you hope you're going to accomplish, and then what makes you the organization that can provide this service. Have you done this before? Show us the proof. And then of course, we want to know how much it's going to cost, minor details like that, details on non-state funds or in-kind contributions. We like those partnerships. So let us know if you're going to be using some other funding that has become available. And then also remember, we're interested in the youth, and we want to hear about some of those projects that engage the youth, especially in those areas that have been affected negatively by by the cannabis related issues. And also, what is you what do you hope the project addresses with regards to community development, safety, and the stability priorities? Those are our values, right? Our priorities, that community development, safety, and stability. So how does your project address that? And I always like to say this, and I just have to say it. When you're doing a grant, make sure you're reading the question, answer the question, reread the question, and then reread your answer, make your modifications, and then give it to a friend that you trust or a family member that you trust, and have them read the question and your answer and see if they think you answered the question. It really does help getting another person's viewpoint, especially someone that hasn't touched what you've been working on. That fresh set of eyes is always nice.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lucy. So as we transition into CanGrow and talking about the program CanGrow, I want to wrap up and make sure you remember CanRenew is not specific to cannabis. The biggest priority is that the investment is being made in eligible communities, and that you can partner with different types of organizations to maximize the impact of the dollars, to ensure that even a smaller community organization can have an idea launch off the ground by partnering with a larger organization to make that happen. So really thinking about your strategy for implementation for any of the projects you're thinking about. And so the next grant, which is CanGrow, is not unaffiliated with cannabis. In fact, these dollars are going towards organizations that will benefit potential cannabis businesses. And when I talk about CanGrow, I'm really excited because Minnesota was really innovative in thinking about the industry and how to structure the industry and how to resource the industry specifically for those social equity qualified businesses. It's unique in its approach towards technical assistance. It's also unique in its approach towards funding. So we've designed CanGrow as one of the programs that we house, but there are also other business development programs supporting cannabis through Deed. So if you're looking for additional resources, check out Deed as well. But CanGrow is a targeted program that supports farmers who are looking to enter into or expand in a legal cannabis business. And while this is aimed at benefiting farmers, the other thing and the other misconception that we need to make clear is that this grant program does not go direct to farmers from us. So we fund organizations that will support farmers down the line. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we're supporting farmers through the CanGrow program. But if you are your own business in cannabis and you are looking for funding, you can apply for a loan from the CanGrow program, but your application doesn't come to the Office of Cannabis Management. Your application will go to one of our partners who is one of our grantees to this program. So I want to name that early on as we talk through these things and as you think through this program. And again, name that CanGrow is specific for farmers. So remember when we talked about social equity qualified folks, and we named that farmers were one of them, and they had to be in operation for 3 years on a farm and have revenues of $5,000 to $100,000. So thinking about that demographic is who this grant serves. Whereas CanRenew is for eligible communities, CanGrow is for farmers. And CanGrow is designed to help eligible organizations create resources for farmers. And we're creating resources in two ways. One is guidance and training and support through our technical assistant grant program. And the other wave is capital. It is a revolving loan grant, which is a low interest grant program to support farmers to enter and expand into the legal industry. An eligible organization for this grant program is very similar to CanRenew. It is any organization that has the capacity to help farmers navigate the regulatory structure of the legal cannabis industry. And specifically, we want to make sure that you're supporting farmers who are facing barriers to education and employment. And these organizations could be educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, private businesses, community groups, units of local government, or partnerships between any of those different types of organizations. So, and this is one where if you're thinking about doing a technical assistance grant to get money to pay for your development of a curriculum to support farmers, maybe you have the accounting expertise, but you might not have the cultivation expertise. So a partnership between institutions might be really helpful on this grant program. Industry, as defined in statute, is the legal cannabis industry in Minnesota. So we're specifically talking about that adult use cannabis in Minnesota. It is not inclusive of hemp. That is something we need to name out. And then technical assistance helps an organization address a development need or resource gap, such as providing guidance, custom training, resources, tools, webinars, to ensure that farmers can get into the industry and navigate the industry. And then a farmer, as defined in Minnesota law, is a natural person who regularly participates in physical labor or operation management in the person's farming. And farming is defined as agricultural industry operation and files in Minnesota State Law 500. with that, I'll pass it over to Lucy to give us a little bit of the logistical side of CanGrow.
Yeah. So as Jess was talking about, there's two parts to this grant. The technical assistance side, which we've nicknamed TAG, and then the revolving loan grant, which we've shortened it to RLG. And so the technical assistance side helps those farmers who want to navigate the regulatory structure of the legal cannabis industry. And we're looking at providing grants to organizations between $10,000 and $50,000. And remember, these are 1-year grants. And then the revolving loan grant helps the nonprofit corporations fund loans to farmers so they can enter or expand into the legal cannabis industry. And we're looking at providing grants to those, we call them CDFIs. They're community development financial institutions. And we're looking at providing $200,000 to $500,000 for loans to farmers. And those farmers can then go to those CDFIs and get a loan from between 2,500 to 50K. But if they have a match, say they had a private donor or another source of funding, they could request up to $150,000 if they have a match. And so we're looking at for both parts. We want to make sure that we're helping farmers throughout the state, right? It's not just one location. There's farmers throughout the state, so we want to make sure that we're helping everybody. And then the applications where the proposed technical assistance will serve where long-term residents are eligible to be social equity applicants. That's who we're going to prioritize there. So we want to make sure that we're hitting those areas where those long-term residents live. And then for the technical assistance, and then for the projects that demonstrate a history of successful technical assistance or navigation services, particularly for farmers facing barriers to education or employment. So if you have projects within the technical assistance that are in areas that farmers struggle, we're looking at prioritizing those types of projects.
Thanks, Lucy.
I think.
Did you have something you wanted to add there, Lucy?
No.
Okay. Yeah, and some of the things, so as you can see, this is like one of we have a big scope of work when it comes to the tech to CanGrow, right? We have 2 lanes that we're swimming in to give funding to. We're giving funding to those resources that are going to help educate and equip farmers into entering the legal industry. And then we have the financing program, which is giving capital or loaning capital to farmers. And one of the things that we are always, like I said, part of the Division of Social Equity's role is to act as an ombudsman person and to hear feedback and listen to groups. And so some of the feedback that we're hearing is around like, we need support navigating this system. It's complex, it's really difficult, it's really cumbersome. How do we, even if I get through the application process, what are the ways that I can be a successful business down the line, right? So that's what technical assistance is meant to do. It's meant to provide resources or navigation services to farmers to make this a little easier for folks to get into and to operate within. And as we think about, like, everybody might be at a different place when we're thinking about where folks are on this readiness continuum, right? There might be folks who have been working in cultivation centers in different states, and they know how to write an SOP. They know how to work in this highly regulated industry. That's something that's norm and commonplace. There might be folks who, don't have the infrastructure to even support documentation appropriately. And so thinking about all of the surveillance and security that's necessary in a business might be really overwhelming to them. And so granting funds to organizations that are meant to provide education to a bunch of people who might be at different levels of readiness is really difficult. And so what we developed when in our office is something that we've coined the continuum of readiness. So as you're thinking about the educational opportunities or the training or development you're providing to farmers through the TAG program, we're really thinking about how you're pushing folks along this continuum of readiness. And as you can see in this continuum of readiness, we're thinking about regulatory knowledge, right? So those are the things like, how am I compliant with the law? How am I making sure I know what the regulations say and what I need to do in all of the processes? And then operational capacity, right? We know that startup businesses fail within most startup businesses fail within the first 3 years of operation. So like making sure you're ready to run a business is another level of readiness to consider as you're making your decision to enter into the cannabis industry. And for our technical assistance providers, we want to be making sure that your curriculum design is pushing the needle. It's moving the needle for these farmers to make that empowered decision and choice. And so when folks are really, really low on the matrix, that means they might have never run a business before. They don't know how to do a lot of operations, and maybe they don't have a lot of information or understanding of the regulatory knowledge. So the types of resources that you're providing those farmers at that level in the continuum is going to look very different than someone who has high level of regulatory knowledge and experience and high level of operational capacity, right? You might be helping them to build a sustainable model or to scale their model, right? Whereas when you're lower, you might be helping them just to understand the risk and benefits of the industry and make a choice about whether or not they want to even enter. And so as you're thinking about the types of technical assistance that you're providing, we also want to make sure that you're providing the right type of technical assistance for your audience and making sure you're thinking about and considering what their needs are. And so that's why we've designed this continuum of readiness as we're thinking about the cannabis industry. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Lucy to talk a little bit about the types of projects and ways that you can deliver that training and education.
Yeah, so we're really excited about this program because we really feel that it can help uh, farmers um, get up to speed and make sure that they're making the right decision for themselves, right? And so with that in mind, what do farmers, typically need help with, right? They might need help with cannabis specific support, like understanding the tax laws and regulations and how to grow. Um, but they also will need business planning assistance, right? Because when you go to ask for funding, people want to know, what's your business plan? So how to write a plan, zoning requirements, you know, when you own a business, you need SOPs, right? The standard operating procedures. So developing those, conservation and legal concerns. Um, there's OSHA, our friend OSHA over there. There's the environmental issues over there, crop insurance, some of those impacts that might happen to farmers. What happens, if they're in federal programs, what happens to that? So just educating farmers about, uh, some of those legalities that may crop up. And then we always need a friend, so having opportunities where farmers can interact with others, and get some expert assistance and or just basic mentoring, right? And so learning about some of those best practice methods and industry standards. And so how are you going to do that now that you've figured out like what you want to provide to the farmers? How are you going to deliver it? So is it going to be if you're doing a business plan, are you going to do that online or are you going to do it in person? Let's talking about OSHA. Um, that might be better as a webinar because a lot of that stuff doesn't necessarily change. and it'll last for a long time, right? Because you're concerned, if you're going to spend money in developing something such as a webinar, you don't want it to be outdated next week. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about your projects and how you're going to deliver it. Handbooks, toolkits, one-on-one consultations. That might be better under, because some one-on-one consultations, farmers will have very specific questions, especially with regards, to some of the legal issues or accounting. So that might be better on the one-on-one side. So it's just looking at your project and then figuring out how you're going to deliver it. And so these are just ideas that we kind of just put out there to help you think about it. And so then I think we go back. Oh, yes. So eligible expenses, because we're talking about, those projects, how are you going to deliver it? And what do you need in order to conduct your project? If you're having people into a space, you might need to rent some space. And then if you're bringing people in, you might need to bribe them with a little bit of food and beverage. Those are really important things when providing the technical assistance. Obviously, you don't need that if you're doing webinar, but you might need a little bit of help, maybe with hosting or the production of the webinar. And so those kinds of expenses obviously are allowed. I think we start going on to the revolving loan. Yes, we do. So the revolving loan, that was all about the technical assistance side, right? That's where people are, getting educated, they're learning. So now that they've learned and they're ready to apply some of that knowledge, the revolving loan grant can come in and help nonprofit corporations provide loans to support that farmer as they enter or expand into the industry. And then the program was also to help provide loans to businesses we want to make sure that these loans that they're providing are to businesses that are not likely to undertake the project if they didn't get the loan. So basically, it's not for everyday operational expenses. So I like to use, maybe the farmer needs a tractor or a conveyor belt, right? Yes, they can do their work without the tractor or their conveyor belt. It's just with the tractor or conveyor belt, it's way more efficient and effective. And so getting the loan would allow them to incorporate a new technology into their business. And so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at something that they wouldn't do if it weren't for the loan. So based off of those 4 categories, right, that we looked at with under the technical assistance, we still have them. So if they're a licensed farmer versus a non-licensed farmer, we thought about some of the loans that a non-licensed farmer may need versus ones that a licensed farmer may need. And so that business planning, obviously both sides need business planning. But the non-licensed farmer, they're still getting it up and going. And so they may need a little bit more extra help, right? We know that there's TA out there that can probably provide some of this, but they may need a little bit more fine tuning because they have some special uniqueness with regards to their farm. And so, they might need a loan to improve their fire codes. They fell short and they need to do something to help meet that need. And then workplace safety, conservation, and legal concerns. We always want to make sure that we're thinking about the land, those land determinations. That's a huge thing in the ag industry, right? And then on the licensed farmer activities, making sure that, they're using the land and appropriate methods, safety and environmental standards, right? Maybe they found out that they didn't have enough security equipment, and in order to be compliant, because, state law says that you have to have security, for cannabis farms. So there you go. Cannabis specific support. Maybe the farmer wants to develop a marketing campaign so that they can get their product, to more vendors, or maybe they're adding, it's a value added process, right? Turning flour into a concentrate or something. And I shouldn't have said that because there's licensing issues with that, so I apologize for that. So, expert assistance, again, those licensed farmers, they already kind of know what they're doing, but sometimes they just need that friend to come in and say, this is what you need extra help with, and provide that expert guidance. And of course, usually those consultations come with a cost. And so now we're looking at both sides, right? So we've got the technical assistance on the left side, and we've got the revolving loan on the right side, and who can apply. So on the technical assistance side, it's very much, like Jess mentioned, it's very much like the CanRenew. So it's your nonprofit organizations and, businesses and educational institutions, co-ops, local governments, and of course partnerships. But on the revolving loan side, because it's so specific, because we want to make sure that these organizations that we're working with, they have the skills to provide the loans out to the farmers. So we're looking at working with the nonprofit corporations that have a board of directors, and it even goes in to say that, they have to have, someone on the board that even has ag business, skills, so that we're not leaving that farmer high and dry, right? And we want to make sure that they have the technical skills to analyze the project, offer provide the loan, and then do the following up, right? We want to make sure that it's all copacetic there. So that's the type of organization that we're looking at, with regards to the revolving loan. And so again, we're looking at the application, right? We're looking at, on one side, the tag side, it's a little bit more in depth, but we still need, basically like CanRenew, we want to know the 5 W's, right? When, where, why, how, and how. And making sure that you're telling us why your organization is the best one to provide the technical assistance. What is it about the community that makes them the ideal community, to provide the technical assistance to? Do the farmers, within that community, do they face barriers to education or employment? Your past experience as the organizations, have you had success with any of your past projects? Especially if it's a very similar project to the one that you're proposing to us. Of course, we want to know how much things cost. And then, if you're going to provide any, if you have any match funds, out there. And so then on the revolving loan, I just went ahead here and I just put basically what, the 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 makeup of the organization needed to be, just so that you guys could see that again. We just wanted the application on the revolving loan. It's a little bit different, and it's more about like, how does the bank do business? What is their history? And those kinds of things, what communities they serve, and those kinds of things. But anyways, I apologize that this slide didn't get updated. So
All right. So now we've gone through our, thank you, Lucy. We've gone through our Can Renew and Can Grow program. So again, Can Renew is community renewal, community reinvestment, reparations for harm from cannabis prohibition, right? Can Grow is targeted resourcing for farmers, both in educational and in capital. And we're looking for folks that want to partner with the Office of Cannabis Management to bring those things to life, to bring community renewal and access for farmers into the industry to life. And I hope that everyone in this room will plan to apply. And I do know that the process is quite tedious. And so as you have questions, because I know that you will, our email is right here on the screen, cannabisequity@state.mn.us, and that'll get our full grants team and myself. And then we also are open to having facilitated conversation with any groups that you might be leading. So if you want this information out into community, we know that seeing it come from the Office of Cannabis Management might present barriers because they might be like, oh, we don't do anything with cannabis. So if it's coming from your nonprofit or your group to get this information out, we would love to partner with you. To do so, you can just go to our website and request a speaker, or you can email us and ask for a presentation or information session, and we'll get back to you. As we wrap up, we have one final poll, which is in chat, and we're asking which one do you plan to apply to, right? Which grant are you interested in and now you will apply to? And I hope that you make a commitment with us to make sure that these funds get into the hands of the folks who are going to make sure it gets into those most impacted eligible communities. So again, I want to say thank you for your time and being here today. And I hope to see your responses in chat. And if you need any support that we can feasibly provide, feel free to email cannabisequity@state.mn.us. We did not go over timeline for the rollout of this program. Our goal is to have them roll out early 2025. So be on the lookout, sign up for our mailing list so that you can be the first to know. With that, have a great evening and thank you.